Afternoon, Bolingbrook Church. We are in the fourth part of our summer series. Everyone say summer series. Our summer series, if this is your first time at Bolingbrook, our summer series is an attempt for you to not get tired of my preaching. And so what we do is we invite guest speakers to come and talk about a topic. And today, I want you guys to give a big thank you to, I want to call him, because before he was a CEO, he was a pastor. Pastor Anthony Bolden for preaching a word last week. If you were here last week, give him a thank you. I think he ran back. But last week I was gone with the adventurers and this little guy fighting off storms in Camp Akita down south. I literally almost turned to Mary Poppins. That's for another sermon. It was crazy. If it wasn't for Rawls, everyone give a thank you to Rawls. If it wasn't for Rawls, I would have been literally Mary Poppins and blown into a field. It was the craziest thing. That's another sermon. But today I have the honor and the blessing to invite up to stage a really good friend of mine. His wife preached a way better sermon earlier this year in March. His name is Matthew Lucio. And I want to invite Matthew Lucio. So if you guys can give him a warm welcome to the stage today.
I was feeling bad about my Coldplay joke last summer, and now I'm not. Nikki, it's good to see you. Man, what an introduction that is. Good grief. It's good to be with you guys. It's good to see some familiar faces. In case you're wondering about the fit, these are Annie Smith socks. She was a poet and editor and whatnot in the 1850s before she died of tuberculosis. That darn tuberculosis. Took so many ahead of their time. That was neither here nor there. Anyways, I am excited to be with you. That just reminds me, because of ADHD, there's a book on tuberculosis I want to read. Lord, don't let me forget this. Anyways, it's good to be here. I'm just going to say that vision of you like coming down from the sky like Mary Poppins is a movie no one asked for. But we're probably going to get, because Disney. Anyways, it's good to be with you guys. It's good to be with you as a part of this series. I don't really think people need a break from you because you're awesome. And no, they don't. Not really. But you're stuck with me, so, it is what it is. In case you don't know, I am from the great state of Ohio. I preached in Africa one time and they pronounced it Ohio, which sounded so much cooler than actually being from Ohio. And as I told the first service, Ohio is just one of those states where more people are from than actually live there, for reasons that are apparent, I think, to anybody who's been to Ohio. So a lot of expats. Before first service, someone came up to me and they said, I wish my wife would let me grow that kind of a beard. And I said, I know I look a little bit like a Confederate general, but I told him, my wife requires me to grow this beard because she thinks I'm ugly. And so the more of my face that's hidden, the better. So I can't help it if his wife liked his face and wanted to see it. But it's okay. It works from the best. I'm in my prophet era right now. Yeah, she wants me to shape it into like a pointy spike, but I know my last name is Lucio, which is too close to Lucifer, but I feel like a pointy beard would just be too much. Not with this last name. I can't do it. Maybe if we get long enough, we can do some Viking braids or something like that. Anyways, that's where I want to get to, okay? We're going to leave the Confederate thing behind. Anyways, I used to think that I liked scary things. I used to think that I was cool like that. When I was a kid, I was at my cousin's house, and we stayed up really late in the basement of my grandmother's house. Actually, it was my grandmother's house. She had a TV in the basement, which was a novel thing at the time. And we watched Arachnophobia, and I thought this was going to be a positive experience for me. It was not. And I have been terrified of spiders my entire life, ever since that moment. The idea of tarantulas just falling from a tree at any given moment. I know they were probably in a rainforest or somewhere, and we don't have tarantulas in trees here. But there are times where I will look up at an oak and wonder, I wonder if there's a tarantula up there that's just going to fall on my face at the moment. This is how much this movie terrorized me. But I didn't learn my lesson. We went to a few haunted houses, and I thought, I'm going to be cool. Like, I'm brave. I'm not going to be scared of these things. So the cool thing about this haunted house is you had to wait in line for an hour. So you really had to think about what you were about to do for a long time. The good news is there was a little kiosk outside. I want to show a picture and see if you can tell me what it is. That had one of these. Oh, I guess it has donuts on it. It makes it kind of easy on you. Got a cheat code here. This thing is the greatest device ever made because it drops that donut into this river of oil, and then you just get to watch it go down, and it flips it like halfway over, and then eventually they just put some cinnamon sugar or whatever on there and drop it in a brown paper bag that quickly becomes soaked with grease. And I had to eat them either before they cool off because I wanted them warm, or before the grease ate a hole in the bag and the donuts just fell out. And as I went back to this haunted house in subsequent years, I realized I'm really just going for the donuts. I'm not really in the haunted houses. And that became apparent to me when I was walking through the haunted house and some dude jumped in front of me to scare me. And I was scared, and then I punched him in the face. Didn't mean to. It was just instinct, fight or flight, I guess. And now I know which way I'm going to go on that one. But it terrorized me, and ever after, I've wondered who that person was, whether I'm going to see them in heaven and apologize to them. And he'll probably tell me, don't worry about it, I was punched 942 times while I did that job, because I'm sure I'm not the only person who kicked him, pushed him, punched him, whatever. And then I realized he probably did not get paid enough for that. Not at all. As I grew up, other fears came into being. I was baptized into a suburban church, really small congregation, that taught me some new fears. Sometimes you join a group and they teach you, don't go to that house over there in this neighborhood. That house is a scary house. Or don't hang out with this group at school. Be afraid of them in some way, shape, or form. And at this church, I was told to be afraid of certain Bible translations because they're wrong. Nobody actually knew much about Bible translations. We were told that be afraid of this one. Don't use this. Don't listen to certain preachers. Don't read certain books, which was really easy because it was all non-Christian books. So it wasn't hard to kind of figure it out. And then even most of the Christian ones were probably not good either. Anyways, and I just realized like my world was kind of mapped out, and with a black marker, like large sections of it were just crossed out. Be afraid of these things. When I became a parent, I had even more things to be afraid of, namely anyone within 10 feet of my children who I don't know. And Laura has the most amazing radar in the parking lot of any public place. I mean, there could be a car 3.5 miles away. And one of our daughters gets more than 4 feet away from her, and it's like, ding, 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 ding. What are you doing? Come back. Where are you going? And I'm like looking around, and the parking lot is empty. But there's a car somewhere in the vicinity. And she ropes them back in to keep them safe. You don't learn these fears. No one tells you, hey, watch out for parking lots. It suddenly just comes alive when you have kids that the world is a more dangerous place than it was for you. And so you just kind of be like Mother Bear or Father Bear and watch out for them in any conceivable danger. You've got an essential oil for everything. I mean, I don't think they've been bit by a mosquito in years. They get me, but they don't get the kids. Not right. So we just kind of, there's some fears we learn, there's some fears we're taught, there's some fears that are just instinctive. We just learn, there's things that we only do once and we figure it out, right? And there's all these ways in which fear plays into our lives, not just as things to kind of be aware of, but it can begin to operate into how we think and grow in the direction in which we grow. Kind of like sometimes you see these, like a tree or something, maybe somebody wrapped a chain around it really tightly when it was younger, and then the tree just kind of grows around the chain, or like they left an axe in it or something for some reason, and it grows around the axe. And we can kind of grow around our fears in much the same way. I met this lady who grew up during the Great Depression, and for Gen Alpha, that means the Wi-Fi was down. It's a terrible economic situation. She grew up in fear that, not knowing where her next meal was going to come from. And so even though I met her much later in life, I noticed that her cabinets were full of food, of canned food. She would go and just overbuy food. Because even though she had means, even though she had a fixed income, she would always be able to make sure she didn't go hungry. It was a part of her that's like, yeah, but I grew up with this experience, with this fear of maybe not having enough that I'm now overcompensating for the rest of my life. Fear can work on us in really, really funny ways. And I want to examine one story in the scriptures where this happens. This is going to be in the book of Numbers. And to set this up, I'm sure most of you know this story, but if you're like, what is going on in the Bible? Basically, God helped the Israelites escape from Egypt. They wandered through the wilderness. They're now on the cusp of the promised land. And Moses is like, he's the leader of this group. He's like, let's go conquer the promised land. This is the land God has told us is ours. It's a land, they say, flowing with milk and honey. In other words, there's a lot of great fruits there. And I don't care about milk and honey, but like, are there mangoes? Are there papayas? Are there avocados that stay ripe for more than 20 minutes in this land? That's the kind of land I'm looking for. And so Moses is all ready. Let's get into this land. And the leaders of these 12 tribes of Israel say, well, let's hold on a second. Let's send some spies to go investigate the land. So they spend 40 days investigating the land. And I actually had an idea of how do we simulate how long 40 days is in a quick way here. And I was trying to think of a way to simulate this, because I thought, while the children of Israel are waiting for the spies to return, certainly you start thinking like worst case scenarios. What are they going to come back and tell us, right? Because that's what we tend to do when we're waiting, is we try to imagine the worst scenarios. And so one of the ways I was going to illustrate how long it must have felt was I found this video on YouTube of somebody with a computer from, I think, 1995. And he had, it was still connected to dial-up internet. And he tried to load a web page. And so I clipped it. I didn't bring it, but I did clip it, how long it took for him to go to a web page with one image on it. And some of you guys, if you remember those days, like the image would reveal top to bottom, like in blocks. And so it's like, bad news, war started. And it's like, you just get the little top part of it. And it's like, well, I see clouds, maybe smoke. I don't know. Anyways, I timed this thing and it was like 45 seconds to load one image on 56K internet. And it's like, yeah, that whole experience of waiting for an image to load, and that's just one image, right? Man, heaven forbid someone took more than one picture of the thing that I want to see who won the NBA Finals. It's like, hold on, wait for it. It's never going to happen. And the anxiety you feel while you wait. Certainly, the Israelites must have felt some of this anxiety while they wait for the spies to come back. What report are they going to bring? What are they going to find there? What happens if they find out that the land is too well guarded and we're never going to be able to take it, right? What are we going to do next? We're stuck. We just wandered through the wilderness. Where do we go? And you start going through all of this stuff in your head. Well, they eventually returned, and here's the report they gave in Numbers chapter 13. We'll put it up on the screen for you. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. They brought back some of that mango, papaya, whatever. Actually, it was grapes, but good enough. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. In fact, in Deuteronomy, when this is recounted, it says that the walls of the city go up into the sky. Like they're exaggerating this. But at least here in Numbers, very factional account, like just the details, just the facts of what they saw there. And Caleb, one of the spies, cuts in here. Before they can get into the analysis of the facts, Caleb cuts in, and Caleb says, it says that Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Okay. Well, the other spies were not pleased with Caleb's report. And so they said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. We seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we look the same to them. Now, there's a lot. If I could just get in my time machine, after visiting baby Hitler, I'd go back to this scene. And I said visiting. And I go back to this scene, and I would talk with these guys. I mean, look, we can't defeat them because they're like giants. Didn't God save you from Pharaoh's army? Didn't he deliver you from Egypt? Didn't he part a sea for you? Didn't he preserve you with making sure you had food and water all through the wilderness? And now you're going to get to this point and be like, nah, it's too hard. This is the point you're going to give up right when you get to the finish line? Yeah, we watched this video on YouTube, this Michelle Carey video. She's a YouTuber, and she ran 7 marathons in 7 straight days on 7 continents. One of them was in Antarctica. It's insane. It's a group of these people. They do this every year. They're insane people, but it's fun to watch. And they just kind of charter this Boeing or Airbus or whatever jet, and they live on this thing. So they fly to Antarctica, they run their marathon, they sleep on this jet, they, shower on this jet, whatever. They land at the next place. They're getting off, they run a marathon, they get back on the jet, they go to the next location. 7 marathons in 7 straight days. And it would be like they had just run the 6th marathon. They get to the 7th starting line. They run the race. They get to like mile 25 and then saying, you know what? This is too hard. That's what I feel about the Israelites right here. Like, really? You've come all this way and now you're going to give up? Look, when it comes to running 7 marathons, let's be honest. When it comes to running 1 marathon, I've already given up. But you'd think if you've started this, and you've seen God's hand in Egypt, you've seen God's hand at the Red Sea, you've seen God's hand all through the wilderness, all the way up to this point. This is where you're going to give up when you're on the cusp of this thing that God has for you? Why? Because of the fear that they felt. So real quickly, several of the things here and how fear is affecting them. And it's worth noting this, okay? The first thing fear is doing to them is it's distorting their vision. Not only did the Israelites say, well, the giants in this land, they look at us as grasshoppers. We're small in their eyes. They could squish us like bugs. But they actually came to adopt the view that their enemies had of them. Because the text says that we're grasshoppers in their eyes and in our eyes also. We've come to believe the story that they are telling about us. And so they're already defeated. The second thing is fear turns facts into fate. In other words, the cities are fortified, the people are large, there's nothing we can do to change that. Yeah, well, the Egyptian army was strong, and the Red Sea was impenetrable. How are you going to walk across that? You had no boats, right? But God somehow turned those facts around into other facts, right? He just split the sea, he defeated the army, right? But like here it's, no. The walls are too strong. The people are too big. There's nothing we can do about it. It's inevitable. We're going to be defeated, so let's just give up before we even try. Third thing, fear creates moral panic. Because not only do they feel fear, but then they come back like some COVID Karen and spread it to everybody else. You guys didn't have that experience, did you? A few years ago? It was dark times, guys, dark times. And they got to tell everybody else, right? Caleb is like, let's just go into the land. We got this. The Lord is with us, right? And they're like, no. Hold on. They're too strong. They're too powerful. It's too perilous. Sorry, a little Princess Bride. No, not Princess Bride. A little Monty Python. Sorry. Either one is good. But anyways, the fourth thing we see about fear here is that fear rewrites the story. And we actually get a clear example of this in Deuteronomy chapter 1, because there we get a retelling of this story. And so Moses, this is like 40 years later, Moses is retelling what happened at this moment. And this is what Moses says about this moment. He says, you grumbled in your tents and said, the Lord what? Hates us. So he brought us out of Egypt to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. Fear is rewriting this story that they've been living. It's not about a loving God who got them out of slavery. It's not about a loving God who split the sea so they could cross and delivered them from Pharaoh's army. It's not about a loving God who nurtured and protected them in the wilderness. That's not the story anymore. This history has been rewritten, and now we're living in a story where God did all of those things for us just so he could bring us deeper into this trap and see us be destroyed. You get that? The facts are still the same, but how we interpret the facts, the story we tell with those facts, has been poisoned by the fear that they felt. By the way, Moses, 40 years later, here in Deuteronomy, is trying to provide the counter story here to meet the same facts. And this is what Moses tells them. I said to you, do not be terrified. Do not be afraid of them. The Lord your God, who is going before you, will what for you? Will fight for you, as he did for you in Egypt, before your very eyes and in the wilderness, right? You guys should know better. You've seen the Lord fight for you. And then I love this picture that Moses adds here at the end. There you saw how the Lord carried you as a father carries his son all the way you went until you reached this place. In Moses' telling of the Exodus story, God carried you in his arms all the way through the wilderness, all the way through the Red Sea, all the way out of Egypt to bring you to this place. And he set you on your feet, and now you're like, I want to go back. Sometimes when we're afraid, an antidote has to be to go back over the facts. How did I get here? And remind ourselves that God has been carrying us all the way up until this point. And if God has been carrying you this far, he didn't go through all that effort just to dump you off so your enemies can triumph over you. He's not so malicious as to say, I'm going to work these miracles to get these people out of slavery so other people can kill them. I mean, it makes no sense, right? But fear isn't rational. Fear isn't trying to wrestle with the facts to try to find the best narrative that fits them. Fear is irrational. And so sometimes it helps for us. Let me just go back over this story again. What story am I telling myself about what God is doing in my life? Is it the Lord hates me and he's brought me here to abandon me? Or is it the Lord loves me and if he's carried me thus far, he's going to carry me to the end? We got to check what story we're telling about our own lives. Now, a couple of ways in which understanding fear can help us as we do ministry, because we're all called to be putting bricks into the kingdom of God and building this reality that God is bringing into this world. So a couple of things to keep in mind. First, we have to understand how fear shapes the people whom we are serving. I don't know about you, but like I open the news app and it's terrifying all the time. And it's overwhelming. Like I used to read this, he's a secular humanist guy, but he was a media critic, and especially in the 80s. And he was remarkably prescient. His name is Neil Postman. And he wrote, his most famous book is called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And he was complaining about news back then, saying that like a couple hundred years ago, news meant, for most people, news meant your neighbor's barn is on fire, come help. Or, you know, my horses got away, come help me locate them, or something like that. News, in other words, for most people meant something that you can help with. And news today, like 99.99999% of it is something you can't do anything about except sit there and be frustrated and sad and angry and despair, right? Because look at all these bad things that are happening. Like, why are you telling me things that I can't fix, right? Like I can't help. And so it can make us feel hopeless and it can make us feel alone and afraid and all of these things. Like we want to be informed. That's kind of where it gets us, right? We want to be plugged in. We want to know what's going on in the world. But like it has this kind of dysfunctional relationship with us. And the way that it's presented to us is in a way that just kind of, you know, what am I supposed to do? What can I do about any of this? Right? We feel so small in light of what's going on in the world. And as we serve people, whether it's on Serve Sabbath or whether it's in our own personal way, we got to remember there are people who are wrestling with this too, and who may not have the same hope that we have in Jesus. There's a guy I watch his videos. He's a cooking guy named Alton Brown, who makes the best baked potato I've ever seen in my life. It's fantastic. I can't wait to try one this afternoon. Anyways, he used to have a show, I think, on the Food Network and all these kind of things, and he was very publicly a Christian some years ago. Anyway, somebody asked him on a show recently on YouTube where he's at in his walk with God, and he said something that just kind of haunts me. He said, "I don't believe in God, but I'm afraid of him." And I can't help but wonder, are there a lot of people out there who maybe they don't believe in God, but that doesn't mean they don't have a complicated relationship with God? You know what I mean? They still have strong thoughts and feelings about God, even if they're not willing to say that they believe that he exists. That makes sense? It seems a little bit contradictory, but I think there's a lot of people out there who are carrying this kind of baggage. They're living in a world full of fear and anxiety and uncertainty, and they're putting their best foot forward. They're putting on a brave face and all these sort of things. But we're serving people who are going through things. Everybody is. We're going through things too, right? And so it's good to keep this in mind, how fear can be working on people. They can somehow act or say things that seem out of character or unexpected, right? There's so many people these days who are getting angrier and more despondent and more cynical, and we're being discipled by the fear that pervades around us in society. So that's one thing, is it shapes the worldview of the people we serve, but it also shapes the worldview of the people who serve, namely us. We're not immune to what happens in the world. And there's two ways in particular that it can impact us that I want to highlight. One is of course, as I talked about, the news is a whole experience. It's a discipleship of despair. And it can make you feel like, why go out there and bring clothes or bring food to people? Because what good is it going to do in the end when we have wars and famines and all sorts of terrible things happening in the world? Like, what difference am I really going to make? What's the point of trying? Right? We can kind of feel that fear pulling us down sometimes when we want to do something brave for God, when we want to serve God in our communities. And it's good to remind ourselves from time to time, hey, the battle's already been won. The kingdom is coming. And it's going to be a kingdom as promised, where God's going to wipe away every tear. Where war is not the norm, where people hurting people is not the norm. In fact, it won't exist at all. And so when we are building the kingdom of God in our own way, and whatever we're able to do in our spheres of influence in life, for however much time we have on this planet, the building of the kingdom of God is never in vain. We're building something that lasts, not just during our lifetime, but forever. And so let's not grow weary in well-doing. Let's not lose heart because it seems like the world is breaking all around us, because every brick we lay down, every act of kindness, every attempt to show people the love of God is never wasted. It's never wasted. The second way that this can impact us is illustrated by this thing that happened about 50 years ago. There was this Christian conspiracy theorist that a bunch of people were following at the time. And he was saying the Illuminati was going to come in 1979. Just spoiler alert, I don't think that happened. And he was telling Christians, yeah, let's do it. We don't need audio. See, when I talk about conspiracy theorists and then the audio cuts out, you know what I mean? What are the odds? What are the odds? All right, the Illuminati, I don't think that happened. And then my mic is just out. Just out. Totally not real. Oh. Anyways. So this guy was going around, he was telling Christians, go buy guns because we're going to have to fight the Illuminati. They're going to attack your homes and you're going to have to defend your families. Like really just getting people upset and afraid. And before he was arrested, put in jail, and died in a psychiatric ward, a lot of people did believe him. And we had this one guy who is a historian. He wrote Christianity Today wrote this expose on this guy and just said, enough is enough with this guy. We need to stop inviting him to churches. And Christianity Today took him down, and this history professor named Walter Utt wrote a letter to the editor at Christianity Today thanking them for taking this guy down. And this is what Walter Utt said. I love this comment. I've been thinking about it for several years now. Utt said, I share your dismay that so many Christian people are vulnerable to this kind of sensationalism, to fear, really. I shouldn't wonder if some might be quite upset with you for trying to take away from them a scenario of doom to which they have become attached. In other words, they want to be afraid, because sometimes to be afraid means to feel alive, to feel like, oh, I know what's going on, right? I'm on the inside. I'm in control of what's about to happen because I'm one of the few people who see what's going on, right? And they don't want you to take their fear from them. He goes on, but do not far too many members of the flock want or need to be kept frightened, right? They want this, and a certain number of shepherds, elders, pastors, find it useful to keep them this way. And the reason why I like this statement is because it gets us to interrogate our own hearts as we serve God and ask ourselves, why am I serving him? Am I here worshiping with you guys because I'm afraid of what's going to happen to me someday in the final judgment if I don't? Or am I here because our God is so good and I want to worship him with fellow believers, and I want to benefit from the wisdom of fellow believers who have different life experiences from me and can teach me things? Right? Am I taking a day of rest because I got to earn my way to heaven? Or am I here because I love God and I want to spend some time with him? Right? Why am I serving in Serve Sabbath? Why am I donating money? Why am I donating my time and attention? Is it because I'm afraid and that fear helps me feel alive and important? Or is it because I love? So I just want to challenge you as I step down. Serve, work, donate, volunteer, act out of love, not fear. Because let me tell you something, guys, whatever giants you face in your life, whatever giants are intimidating you and trying to defeat you before you ever face them, just remember that next to Jesus, this Jesus who parted the sea, this Jesus who raised the dead, this Jesus who conquered death itself, those giants you're facing, they just look like grasshoppers in his eyes.